Hi, I'm Matthew, and welcome to Miniscape. In this video, I'd like to show you my Ultramarines Army. A year ago, I decided to collect the 2nd edition army of my childhood dreams. When I started this project, I set myself the loose challenge of 1. Collecting only era-appropriate models, and 2. Making sure that the vast majority of them were metal. Lead, I wasn't so bothered about because of its toxicity. The other rule I set myself was, as far as possible, paint these in the same style as the heavy metal pictures from the time. You know, the sort that you'd see in rulebooks, White Dwarfs, and the Codex, of course. I'll give you some background to this decision shortly, but first, let's dive straight in and look at the models. Let's start with the Ultramarine Captain, the first Ultramarine I painted. This chap was available in blister packs as far back as 1989. He's from the Rogue Trader era and was even present in the heavy metal section of the 2nd edition rulebook. I've heard people refer to him as the inspiration for Captain Cato Sicarius, much like this Blood Angels Captain model was the inspiration for Captain Tycho. People have hated on his cape before too, but I enjoyed adding the Ultras symbol to it. One curious thing is his power sword, which seems a little short to me. The helmet plume is where it's at for me though. Next, I tackled the Tactical Squad. This isn't the set from the 2nd edition box, but it's close. I gathered these from models from a few lots on eBay. The Sergeant is by far my favourite. I love his power fist. It carries a real get off my lawn vibe. The banner is an original since I kept many of these and the decals since that era. I am glad it finally got a chance to be used. The Flamer is no nonsense in a couple of ways. He's firing from the hip, plus he's an easy model to build, being only 2 pieces. The missile launcher required the most effort, and I can see now I need to add some more black to the flames. Something for the to-do list. Then we have 7 bolter guys. I am missing the guy stepping forward, a favourite sculpt of mine. One day perhaps. I painted the underside of the shoulder pads black, which is just as they were painted in the Codex, and I wanted to be faithful to the old paint scheme. The decals are modern though. I didn't quite have enough of the older ones. These two are a similar sculpt, except the beaky. Well, and the knee pads. Okay, they're not that similar. The 2 beakies were not in the original box set, but I like to shoehorn in some Mark 6 armour where I can. The entire squad took me a couple of months to paint on and off. Each got 3 to 4 coats of Calidor Sky over a white prime. Next was a Scout Squad. These particular sculpts were released towards the end of 2nd edition, but in my opinion, Scouts have never got a better sculpt since these guys. And I told myself, this army would include as much metal as possible. Their faces have so much more character than the newer plastic ones. And they were easy to obtain second hand. The earlier plastic Scouts from Rogue Trader era rarely come up second hand, it seems. I had these models for my Blood Angels in the 90s, so it was good to find them again. I found a suitable decal for the shoulder pads, but one shoulder pad is bare. I'm not sure what to put on it. Any ideas? Let me know. The second character I added to my army was a chaplain, kindly donated to me by my buddy David. I'm treating him as Chaplain Cassius, since there wasn't an official model for him back then, but I guess he could be a standard chaplain too. And now some history. When I was first getting into the hobby, I, like many people, chose to collect Space Marines. What can I say? I was a sucker for their marketing strategy. But what colour to paint my miniatures? In my circles, Ultramarines had a bad rep. They were known as Vanilla Marines, the rich tea biscuit of the Space Marine sphere. My contemporaries believed these were the chapter one collected if one lacked any imagination. A friend of mine swore by his Space Wolves. He would often gloat about his Codex snubbing unorthodox squads, how his Terminators could take multiple heavy weapons. All other Space Marines were inferior in his eyes. So yeah, he was that guy, and I didn't want to follow in his footsteps. But I didn't want to go for vanilla either, for fear of being labelled as a smurf, and any of the other derogatories associated with Ultramarines. Even though their blue armour called to me, even though the back of my eyelids could only see their symbol, I resisted the vanilla and chose Blood Angels instead. In hindsight, this was not an original choice either. Blood Angels were on the front of many box sets, and arguably the poster boys of 2nd edition. On reflection, I think Ultramarines would have been a fine collection to chase, had I the grapefruits to defy the opinions of my peers. Had I looked deeper, I would have seen some excellent special characters and plenty more flavour than people denied them. Now, I have never been one to jump on a bandwagon, or to chase a popular trend, but it would be silly of me to avoid such a thing if I genuinely wanted it. So, throwing caution to the wind, I headed for eBay and the long scroll to the army that the child Matthew always wanted. After the chaplain, I painted the transports. 2 rhinos and a Land Raider. The Land Raider was designed to be compatible with my Horus Heresy army, as well as this one. Since I don't want to remortgage my house to be able to afford a Rogue Trader era model, I went for the Horus Heresy Proteus model instead. Therefore, this is the only model with gold trims in this army. The rest of the army uses yellow for the trims. Notice I haven't painted inside the assault ramp yet. Shh, they'll never know. The rhinos were era appropriate though, and with them, I used as many different decals as I could, without going over the top. One of these came with battle damage from its previous owner, so rather than fill in the holes, I painted around the damage to add character. I'm pleased with the result. The assault squad was next, and 5 of these guys got their own video, link in the description. I painted them in 2 halves, and have given them a range of weapons, but mainly chainswords, power weapons, bolt pistols and plasma pistols. I could have taken power axes, but I wanted the parry option that comes with the swords, though for hard hitting, 2 of them have power fists. One sneaky guy has a hand flamer. Back in the day, I spammed these in my assault squad, since I wanted to set my opponents on fire. The bonus is that all Space Marines come with bolt pistols as standard, so even if they are not within range of the hand flamer and its Diddy Flame template, they can still shoot their bolt pistols. The Devastator squad is 10 man as per the codex. I know this was FAQ'd later so you could take combat squads of all kinds of Space Marine squad, but I went for the full squad anyway. 5 of the Bolter Marines are the plastic multipart kit Warriors of the Imperium. 2 heavy bolters and 2 missile launchers were next. Not very exciting, I know, but those are the weapons from the job lots I bought. I figure they are flexible anyway, being able to be equipped with custom shells and missiles, and even the anti-plant missiles, if I so desire. The veteran sergeant here has the red helmet, which I just adore the way that they stand out like this. He also has an auxiliary grenade launcher under his bolt gun. I figure he didn't want to be left out with dealing out the damage like the other heavy weapons can. Does anyone remember the army box? GW used to sell these around about the mid-90s. They were a complete army in a box, maybe similar in scope to the Christmas army sets that GW releases now. I remember eyeing this one up, and the Orc army set, and the Blood Angels army set. But none of these were within my price range, nothing me or my parents could afford at the time. I recently saw one of these up for sale on eBay, unopened. The asking price, £2,750. Part of this dream was to collect something like that, but I guess I have surpassed it now. Woo for life goals. Another set that I really wanted to buy was the Imperial Fist Supremacy Force. Maybe that will be a future project, if my wife doesn't put a cap on my spending. Of course, what is an army without a good selection of special characters? There was no way I wasn't going to add Marnius Calgar or Chief Librarian Tigurius to my force. I took a bit more time over painting these, studying reference images and trying to replicate them. Of course, I completely beat myself up over not being as neat or crisp as that handsome Mr. Goblin Green and his Tigurius. But hey, I may get there one day. Aren't we all a work in progress after all? Saul Invictus, the captain you see in Terminator armor, didn't have a model, so I had to convert him. He got his own video as well, link in the description. I have plans to play a game with him and the Terminators soon, reliving their last stand against the Tyranids at their polar fortress. The Terminators took a bit of tracking down. I definitely wanted them to be the metal sculpts from the mid-90s. I thought the earlier sculpts would look a bit out of place, and the later plastic versions that came with 2nd edition Space Hulk were lackluster in my opinion. The Sergeant is a conversion, using a chaplain arm for some reason, and he has a plastic sword. There are 2 with Stormbolters and Power Fists, plus 1 with a Stormbolter and Chain Fist. The heavy weapon is an assault cannon for maximum brrrt. I took my time to paint hazard stripes on the gloves. It was a must to fit with the era's painting style. Of course, I had to include a Tech Marine as well. Any support weapons, vehicles and dreadnoughts could only be unlocked by including this specialist in your army. When painting this, I tried out a non-metal metal chrome effect, which kind of worked, but I think it would be better suited to larger models. I used a dark vermilion colour for his armour over a white prime. Several thin coats of this seems to work really well. Perhaps I will use this method if I paint any Blood Angels in the future. And now we come to one of my favourite models, the Dreadnought. I named him Brother Altan, for no other reason than a name generator spat out that name. Back in the day, there were 4 metal Dreadnought kits available: the generic Space Marine kit with assault cannon, the Dark Angels box with missile launcher and las cannon, the Blood Angels set with multi-melter, and then the Space Wolves kit as well. This one is the generic Space Marine sarcophagus with a multi-melter, so it's a hybrid of the 2 kits. While the assault cannon has significant brrrt, the multi-melter on a Dreadnought can also be fired as a heavy flamer, so I like the flexibility of that. I love the weight of this dude compared with the newer plastic kits. It feels like a shot put. I decided to base him on a more modern Dreadnought base rather than the square base of the day. I wanted to be able to use it in the more up-to-date editions of Warhammer 40,000. And the people I hope to play in 2nd edition won't have an issue with what kind of base it's on. Lastly, there's this veteran squad built from the classic 2nd edition monopose Marines from the 40k starter set at the time. They got their own video where I admit I did use the wrong transfers, so you don't need to mention that in the comments. And there we have it. The Ultramarines Army of my dreams. Minus the Whirlwind, Predator, Landspeeder, Razorback and Bike Squad I would still like to add. Without the fiddly war gear, it comes to about 2,800 points according to the 2nd edition rules. Therefore, it's highly unlikely I will ever field it in a single game. That is, unless there is someone out there crazy enough to play against it. And with that, I had better paint some more minis. Take care, and thanks for watching.